So today we're going to go ahead and do a 3 weeks quiz review test. So I make the 3 weeks test for the school. And so I know that this review, if a student is able to do it and understand it, they will be able to understand everything they will need for the 3 weeks test. And the district makes a 6 weeks test, and I am pretty confident that the 6 weeks test will look something similar to this as well, and in turn the actual STAR test will look something similar to this as well. So we'll just be going through a couple different questions, and this should have us prepared for the 3 weeks test and eventually the 6 week test and eventually the STAR test. So the first question is a simple integer question, but first, before we do that, we have to know the different rules. So first we have addition and subtraction rules for adding integers. If we're adding a positive and a positive, we're going to add the numbers together and keep the sign. If we're adding a positive plus a negative, we're going to subtract them and take the bigger sign. Same thing if we reversed it and did a negative plus a positive, we would subtract the numbers and take the bigger sign. And lastly, if we had a negative plus a negative, we would add them together and keep the sign. So if they're the same, negative and negative, positive and positive, we would add them together. If they're different, positive, negative, negative, positive, we would subtract them. Over here, we have the multiplication and division rules, and these are two different sets of rules: addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Positive times a positive equals a positive. Positive times a negative equals a negative. Negative times a positive equals a negative, and negative times a negative equals a positive. It's the same thing for division on these. The first thing we're going to look at whenever we have an integer problem like this is I'm going to write PEMDAS down. PEMDAS is going to help me with understanding the order of operations, and it's going to help remind me each time I do it what steps I need to take. So the first step I need to look at in PEMDAS is the P, which stands for parentheses. Even though I have parentheses, there isn't anything inside of here for me to do. So I'm going to look down at the next step, exponent. There actually isn't any exponents in this problem either, so I can go ahead and go down to the next step, which is a multiplication and division. So starting from the left, right here I see that I have multiplication, and right here I have addition. So because multiplication is on a higher level than addition, I'm going to do the multiplication first. And I have 4 times negative 12. So if I have a positive times a negative, I'm going to look at my rules. Positive times a negative, and know that my answer has to be a negative. And then 4 times 12 will give me 48. So I'm going to rewrite the rest of my problem. I know that this is 48, negative 48 plus negative 13. Now I'm going to look at my adding rules. So if I'm adding a negative plus a negative, I'm going to look at what I have to do. Negative plus a negative, add and keep the sign. So I'm going to add the numbers together. 48 plus 13 is going to be 61. And I'm going to keep the sign, which is the negative sign. So negative 61 would be my answer. Problem 2, it says which expression is equivalent to 7 plus 2 times 54. So once again, I have to do order of operations. I'm going to write PEMDAS down to help me understand the order of operations. So there's no parentheses in here. There's no exponent, but I know once again that multiplication will come before addition. So I'm going to have to do the multiplication piece first. 2 times 54. So I'm going to rewrite my whole problem. 7 plus 2 times 54 is 108. And then when I solve, I'm left with 115. So the goal of this question is to find out which expression is equivalent or the same as 115. So in answer choice A, before I start, once again, I have to look back at the order of operations. I know I have exponent, multiplication, exponent, and addition. So I'm going to look at my order of operations, and I see that exponent comes before the multiplication, so I have to do this first. I know that 3 to the exponent of 2 isn't 3 times 2. It's not 6. What it is 3 times 3, which is 9, times, and this isn't 2 times 5, this is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 2 again is 32. So now I'm left with multiplication and addition. If I look at my order of operations, multiplication is on a higher level than addition, so I'm going to multiply first. 9 times 32 will give me 288 plus 18, and that will go ahead and give me 306. And so I'm going to ask myself, is 306 equivalent to 115? And it's not, so A is not the right answer. So now I'm going to try answer choice B. And once again, I know that this exponent doesn't mean 2 times 6. It means 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then plus 7. So since the multiplication has to come first, I'm going to do the multiplication. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 2 is 32, times 2 is 64, plus 7 will give us 71. And is 71 equivalent to 115? It's not, so I'm going to cross off B. I'm going to go down to answer choice C now. So once again, this one is saying 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, times 2, plus, now once again, this isn't 3 times 3, this is 3 times 3 times 3, plus, this isn't 2 times 4, this is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, and this isn't 2 times 3, this is 2 times 2 times 2. So one thing that we have to be careful of is we have to make sure that we are separating the multiplication and the addition. All the multiplication has to go together. So this one's together, this one's together, this one's together, and this one's together. So 2 with an exponent of 6, we just figured out, and the last answer choice was going to be 64. 3 times 3 is 9, times 3 is 27. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is going to be 16. And 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. And the symbol in between each of these was adding. So we're going to go ahead and add 64 plus 27 plus 16. So I added on this plus 10 because honestly, when I made this, I made a mistake in the calculation. But whenever I did the 2 to the 6th power plus 3 to the 3rd power plus 2 to the 4th power and 8 to the 3rd power, I came up with a total of 105. And then plus the 10 will give me 115. So even though I know that 115 is equivalent to 115, and I know that C is the right answer, I'm still going to go ahead and do D as best practice. Now, I'm not going to go D, but do D because I want you to practice it at home. I want you to see what you get for this answer.